wanted to take this to my mother-in-law, but if you want, I can leave it. Take her a lot of baby's breath.
It should be. One, two, three, four.
Okay.
Five. So 5 is what's
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's a beautiful day at Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm the Reverend Abhi Janamanchi. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm one of your ministers.
And my name is Stephanie Williams. I use she, her pronouns, and I am your worship associate for today. On behalf of the entire congregation, we welcome you to our worship service this morning.
Our words of welcome are filled with our deepest aspirations as we seek to rehearse and embody Dr. King's vision of the beloved community as we responsively say, you are welcome here. Let us try it together.
You are welcome here.
Awesome.
Alrighty, so whether you are joining us for the very first time or you have been a member of our congregation since its first founding back in 1951, you are welcome here. So whoever you are and whomever you love, you are welcome here. Whatever your gender identity and expression, beliefs, or immigration status, you are welcome here. And however you arrived at this beloved place today, whether it be in person or online, you are welcome here.
If you're joining us for the first time today, please raise your hand if you feel comfortable doing so our greeters can offer you a welcome gift and a brochure that talks about Cedar Lane. It also provides a place for you to share your information with us. Thank you for choosing to worship with us. Let us offer our guests a warm Cedar Lane welcome.
And now I would like to draw your attention to our announcements page where there is a plethora of activities happening throughout the week and especially today.
Last night was amazing. Yes. For those of you who missed it, we had the 10th annual benefit concert to support the great and important work of Action in Montgomery, AIM, right here in this sanctuary. This whole place was packed. I think we had more than 300 people just crammed into this space. People from across the community. We had amazing musicians, our choir, they were just resplendent right here. That's a great vision to hold, right, Henry? Yep. And Dr. Jasmine Lee just set this place alight with her Rhapsody in Blue. It was incredible, incredible. So let us offer our deep gratitude to our Director of Music, Dr. Henry Segrishi, who just hit it out of the park, even if it is football season. So, the purpose of a benefit concert is to raise funds to support organizations that are engaged in work that are in alignment with our mission and vision. And last night, we brought in over $8,000. Yes. But we just put a comma there. And the work is ongoing. And so if you are feeling a little bad that you missed this great event, you can assuage that by giving to support this really good cause. So thank you, friends, for being there and for your support and for making this such an amazing, amazing experience. Also, will we have a new member reception after the second service? Yes? No?
It was between. Sorry.
All right. So the new member recognition happened between services, and we had wonderful time and cake and good conviviality. And now we will move on to the happenings after service. This afternoon at 3 o'clock, we'll be holding a celebration of life service for beloved longtime member Connie Nisley in the sanctuary at 3 p.m. All are invited to attend.
Our pastoral visitor for today is Joanne Jersey. She is over at the Joys and Sorrows table, so if at any point during or after the service you have either a joy or sorrow that you would like to share, she will be available for you. And feel welcome at any point during the service to get up and light a candle as well, even if you are not in a headspace to share. Thank you.
And a note about the memorial service. After today's service, if you would please leave the gray hymnals on your chairs, it would greatly help because we will be using them at the service. So thank you in advance. And now I'd like to welcome our President-elect, Todd Chernikoff, who also serves on our nominating committee, to share a bit about both the work of the nominating committee and also an invitation. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Abhi. Good morning. I'm Todd Chernikoff. My pronouns are he and him, and I am the president-elect of the Cedar Lane Board of Trustees. One of the joys in this position is to help welcome new members into the congregation, such as I did at the 9 o'clock service. This service, our president, Peggy Jackson, will be helping to welcome our new members. However, right now I'd like to talk to you about another group which I am involved in at Cedar Lane, and that is the nominating committee. One of my many duties as president-elect is to serve on that committee, and I've also served on that committee as an elected member in previous years. According to the committee's charter, the committee shall conduct searches for candidates, maintain a roster of candidates, and nominate qualified persons from among the active members of Cedar Lane as candidates for the Board of Trustees. The committee shall also search for appropriate candidates to fill vacant, unexpired terms on the Board of Trustees and on other church committees as requested. The committee also nominates candidates to fill vacancies on the nominating committee. The committee's main goals are to nominate candidates for the Cedar Lane Board of Trustees and other officer positions that reflect the mission of the community, and to identify and develop a diverse group of leaders of the congregation to strengthen our shared ministry and lay leadership at Cedar Lane. In addition, the committee works to help facilitate an annual leadership development workshop for congregants in order to build an intentional leadership culture at Cedar Lane, and that will help the church attain its mission and support the spiritual growth, community, service, and prophetic action. If you have any questions about the committee's duties or operations, please see me after the service. You can also speak with Mary Farrar, the chair of that committee, or any of the other committee members. And I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let us now turn to greet our neighbors, especially any new folks who are joining us today. All right, I'm gonna fix this for my height. All righty. Caravan of despair, come yet again, come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan
Come, come, whoever you are.
Do you hear that voice calling you, calling us?
That voice which calls us together today in the sanctuary made holy by our presence and by the sacred breath we share in our singing and our speaking and silence.
That voice which calls us to remember that we are not alone and that we are interwoven into a vast tapestry of existence of which we are all a part.
And just as we have been called together here today, we act as the voice, the heart, the hands of another call.
The call to
Journey with the wanderers.
sing and dance with the worshipers,
Proclaim the memory of those who have taken their leave.
and wrap the despairing and broken in the arms of love and community.
And hold the hands of all of us who have broken our vows and call us back again and again to the covenant and work of justice, humility, and steadfast faithfulness.
For this we are here again together today.
So, my friends, come, yet again come, let us worship together.
Now, as Nate Holtman and Ellen Berg come up to the stage to kindle the chalice, symbol of our faith and our gathered community, please rise in body or in spirit to share in unison the chalice lighting words on the screen. We kindle the chalice flame to affirm our common bonds and purposes with Unitarian Universalists across the country and around the world. As the flame grows, so grows our faith in life and love, and in the wisdom of our liberal way in religion. As the flame grows, so grows our faith in the future, in one another, and in the good we can do together. Let us grow in our faith. Please remain as you are to sing hymn number 347, Gather the Spirit. The words will also be on the screen.
We gather each week, not for our own needs alone, but to bear witness to our joys and our triumphs, our sorrows and our disappointments. And I have a joy to share that is just bursting out of me. Stephanie Williams has been accepted to the PhD program at the University of Maryland for education. In this circle of care, we also make space for life's complexities, the many experiences that both bless and break our hearts. And we come together each Sunday to serve as companions on this life's journey. Our physical presence beside, in front, and behind each other reminds us that we are never alone, even when we leave this space. When I hold up my arms, I invite you to bear witness to this community inside our walls and beyond our walls by saying the words, "We hold you in our hearts." If you are living through the small and extraordinary milestones of life, we hold you in our hearts. If parenting is your spiritual practice, we hold you in our hearts. If you are mourning a loss, if you live with or care for someone with grief or chronic pain, we hold you in our hearts. If you are struggling with illnesses seen or unseen, with mental illness or addictions, we hold you in our hearts. If you have suffered abuse, if you are a survivor, we hold you in our hearts. Within our Cedar Lane community, we have some sorrows. We hold in our hearts Leslie Backus and Greg Cassidy as they mourn the loss of Leslie's brother, Andy. Andy grew up at Cedar Lane, and he was also a Unitarian Universalist minister. Leslie and Greg, we hold you in our hearts. It is with great sadness that we also share the loss of longtime member Marian Torsha, who passed away this week. We hold in our hearts her husband Dennis and their 3 children. Dennis, you and your family, we hold you in our hearts. Our caring extends beyond Cedar Lane to all those whose lives are lost or impacted by calamities and violence in our world. Some of us are feeling the ripples, the strain, the struggle, the stress, the pressure, and the uncertainty that have been surrounding the impeachment trial. If you are feeling your anxiety rise, if you are worried about your livelihood, or there are other struggles connected to this trial, please know that in this community, we hold you in our hearts. We also hold in our hearts those who've been impacted by the gun violence in Seattle, San Antonio, Kansas City, that killed 3 people and injured 27. All those who are impacted, we hold you in our hearts. Let us enter now into a moment of silence together, holding the joys and sorrows of this community and beyond these walls, while those who are mourning the loss of a loved one or commemorating the anniversary of a loss rise in body or spirit. Let's silence together. Spirit of life and love, moving in, as, around, and through all things, remind us that we are indeed a part of an interconnected web. Dissolve for us these false ideas of separateness, and in their place, remind us that we are never truly alone. And in this knowing, may hearts be restored. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be. We also gather this morning to honor our newest members who are joining our congregation. The newest members to join this congregation in its now 68 years of history. We gather as an expression of our mutual quest toward personal and religious fulfillment. We gather secure in the knowledge that the truths we seek are not constrained by doctrine or creed that we must all agree on. What we do agree upon is that we must be accepting of each other in our varied understandings of our religious lives, and that we must take responsibility personally and collectively for the world in which we live. If we are to grow and flourish as a religious community, each of us must contribute to the ongoing life of this community as cohabitants and co-creators with our time, our talent, and our treasure. And in so doing, we must support one another as we enter this search for truth and meaning, as we seek fulfillment and we create belonging.
Good morning. I'm Diane Yonchis. I'm with the Membership Engagement Team. And new members, as I call your name, I invite you to step to the chancel so that we may covenant together. Mariel Jimenez and her son Adrian, Sheila Marr, Dan Coyle. And at 9 a.m. we welcomed Elaine Swift, Maya Holloman, and Susan Duke to our community. New members, please read the new member affirmation printed in your order of celebration. As new members, we accept the responsibilities and freedoms associated with membership in a Unitarian Universalist congregation.
With our time,
gifts, and substance. And to join the members of Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church in a common quest for religious and spiritual understanding and for the common purpose of leading reverent and compassionate lives.
I'm Peggy Jackson, President of the Board, and on behalf of the Board, I welcome you. Will the congregation please rise in body or spirit and share the congregational affirmation printed in your order of celebration? We bid you welcome as you come with anticipation and joy. We hope that you will find here room to grow and flourish in mind, body, and spirit. We accept you in our community as companions in the spiritual journey. We pledge to rejoice with you in times of happiness, to grieve with you in times of sorrow, and to share with you all the blessings of our free faith.
As you cross this spiritual threshold into deeper life, the deeper life of our congregation, and journey together, let these words from our Unitarian forebearer, Theodore Parker, serve as a guidepost for us all and for all of us to recommit to our living faith and this community and each other. Let us say the words together. Be ours a religion which like sunshine goes everywhere. Its temple, all space. Its shrine, the good heart. Its creed, all truth. Its ritual, works of love. Its profession of faith, divine living. Welcome. Let us continue the celebration. This incredible congregation drew together more than 300 people for a musical celebration last night that raised over $8,000. And today, we continue the rich tradition this congregation has of sharing the plate with a worthy organization twice a month that is doing good in the world. And today's Share the Plate recipient is Everytown for Gun Safety. The work that they are doing is pressuring lawmakers to improve our gun laws, raising awareness about gun violence, educating the public about common sense gun laws and responsible gun ownership, mobilizing grassroots supporters, connecting and amplifying the voices of survivors of gun violence. Let us build a better, safer world for everyone. I invite you to begin the offering. Today's offering will be gratefully received. Thank you.
In the words of Reverend Lynn Unger, Through the work of our hands and the work of our lives, our love is made real. May we be grateful for all that we bring and all that we share to make love real here at Cedar Lane.
At a UUA growth consultation held in 2010, one of the most interesting documents that the participants developed was a list called the 7 Principles for UU Vitality. Are you ready for the big reveal? They are:
Number 1, the congregation has a clear and powerful purpose and mission.
The congregation possesses a compelling narrative that connects past, present, and future.
Number 2, the congregation is aware of and responsive to the world around it.
The public mission is owned and embodied by the congregation. There's a strong relationship and high level of participation in living out the public mission.
3, there is vital worship and a vital Sunday experience for all ages.
What was that?
All ages.
Vitality and energy are felt throughout the congregation on Sundays. The worship service is relevant and meaningful in people's lives.
Number 4, church is done well.
The policies and practices are clear and adaptable and responsive to the evolving needs of the congregation. So something's happening here. There's a sense that we must be willing to change ourselves in order to do church well.
Number 5, the congregation cultivates a religious community.
The congregation participates in shared practices and rituals and provides connections that encompass multiculturalism, multigenerationalism, and other forms of diversity. The congregation recognizes and overcomes its own idolatries in how it envisions community.
Number 6, the congregation builds skills to lead and nurtures gifts to serve.
People who come to church discern a call in community. The congregation nurtures, trains, honors, and trusts leaders.
And finally, number 7, strong religious leadership supports the fulfillment of the previous 6 principles.
See numbers 1 through 6. The 7th principle signifies the role of the professional religious staff in promoting the previous 6 principles.
Purpose under him, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to destroy, a time to build. There is a time, there is a time. A time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, a time to dance, to scatter stones, to gather stones, a time to embrace and to refrain, a time to search, a time to lose, a time to hold, a time to release. There is a time, there is a time. A time for silence, a time to speak, a time to love, a time to hate, a time for war, a time for peace. There is a time, there is a time.
Thank you, Henry, for that beautiful rendition of Ecclesiastes. And there is a time to grow as well. It's always a joy to welcome new members into our religious community. It's an opportunity for us not only to enlarge that circle of caring and welcome, but also to recommit ourselves to being on this journey as spiritual companions, supporting one another as we seek to live lives of integrity, of joy, of service together. Welcome. A couple of weeks ago, no, actually last weekend, boy, it feels like 2 weeks, the boards from Cedar Lane, River Road UU, and Fairfax UU got together here at Cedar Lane for a half-day retreat. The boards had never met before, at least in recent years, as a whole body. So we had quite an impressive group of nearly 30 people there. And the focus was to get to know one another and start sharing some stories about what the boards are focused on, what the congregations are dealing with, including sharing some issues and challenges and also opportunities. And then reflect on how might we be working together more closely, actually sharing resources, supporting one another in order to promote and grow Unitarian Universalism in the DMV region. It was an incredible conversation. People just left buzzing, not because Abhi was in the building. Yes. Woo! Gotcha. Thank you. For those who appreciate puns, grateful. No, it was just the synergy of just engaging with one another. And at the end, they did a brainstorming of sharing some wild and scary ideas, which were just fantastic. And I'm still kind of holding on to them because it just caused both holy terror and holy joy when I heard those being shared by our leaders. So anyway, one of the topics that became a big part of that conversation was growth. How do we keep growing our faith? In these times, how can we be engaged in the work of growth? So I thought this morning that would be a good topic for me to reflect on and subject you to some of my thoughts. So 68 years ago, in 1961, the Unitarian Universalist Association was born out of the consolidation of the Universalist Church of America and the American Unitarian Association. Now, the keynote sermon for a new beginning was heralded by the Reverend Donald Santo Harrington at a worship service in Symphony Hall, Boston, on May 23, 1960, after the final vote had been taken. Ken, were you there? There you were. All right. Well, you may remember this. Reverend Harrington declared in his sermon, "It is our tremendous potential, born of the world's response to our new relevance, caused in turn by this new world's need for a religion which is dynamic instead of static, unitive instead of divisive, universalistic instead of individualistic, history-making rather than history-bound. It is our tremendous potential, he declared, and the feeling of its surge and excitement in us and in our congregations that made this Unitarian Universalist merger necessary and indeed inevitable. And then he predicted that Unitarian Universalists needed to brace themselves to absorb the shock of the incredible growth which will accompany our newly won relevance. Onward and upward forever. So this morning I want to turn to some of the implications and complications of growth, not just for our religious community, but also for the larger Unitarian Universalist movement. Now, if we were to go solely by numbers alone, I have to say that we have not quite lived up to Reverend Harrington's prophetic predictions. You see, at the time of consolidation, there were around 229,000 adult UUs and children and youth, 151,577 adults, and 77,546 children and youth in 1,035 congregations. In 2018, there were 192,820 UU adults, children, and youth in 1,029 congregations, of which 154,704 were adults and 38,116 children and youth. So while there are roughly 3,000 more adults than there were in 1961, we have 39,000 fewer children and youth. And this is also directly related to the average age in our congregations, which is rising, currently around 60 years. And also another demographic that has become more and more visible, which is we have more people who identify as female in our congregations. Just our new member recognition this morning must have been an indication. Both 9 and 11 a.m., we had more women joining than other genders this morning. And we also have more single people who are involved in our congregation. I can go on and on. I love these things, but it doesn't lead anywhere if I don't bring it together. So, also, our growth has never matched the rate of growth of our nation's population, which around the same time has gone to more than 330 million people, nor has it reflected the growing diversity of our country's population. So why are we not growing? Well, many reasons have been ascribed to our lackluster growth. Attitudes toward religion in general are changing in the U.S. with increasing secularization in our country, with more and more people who don't identify with any religion in particular, dubbed the nuns, N-O-N-E-S, in a Pew Forum on Religion and Life Study, with more and more who identify as spiritual but not religious and not church-going. Demographics are shifting away from our traditional primary constituency that we used to rely on, middle-class, well-educated, white suburbanites. Meaning, yes. Now, the nuns comprise every age group, every racial, ethnic category in every region in the U.S. Now, young adults have led this trend. According to the Pew Forum again, between 2007 and 14, the percentage of millennials, being the generation born between 1981 and 1996, who are non-religious, jumped from 25 to 34%. And at the same time, the number of non-religious baby boomers, you know who you are, also grew from 14 to 17%, and non-religious Gen Xers, those born between 1965 and 1980, my generation, grew from 19 to 23%. Now, one of the things to remember about the nuns is that it is not that they don't believe in faith or in spiritual development. It is just that they do not believe in institutional organizations that promote faith. So they are deeply spiritual people, many of whom like to pray, many of whom draw from varied sources of spirituality and richness from various world religious and spiritual traditions. And they are deeply engaged in the world. What they don't like is organizational religion. Now, the next thing is racial and ethnic makeup is dramatically changing. The racial and ethnic minorities make up the majority of Montgomery County today. And the U.S. Census Survey in 2009 predicts that we will be a majority of racial and ethnic minorities by 2042. Now, this means we Unitarian Universalists, with our North Atlantic outlook, will grow more cut off from the U.S. population. That is, if we don't make changes that will transform Unitarian Universalism, it will either push us into decline or irrelevancy, or for us present an opportunity to step back and reimagine and retransform our movement. Other reasons. Stewardship consultant Mike Durall, in his book, The Almost Church, Redefining Unitarian Universalism for a New Era, suggests that we have not grown because we are a low expectation faith. That is, he explains, we don't ask of our members to give generously of their time, energy, and resources with passion and commitment in service of the life-enhancing, life-saving message of Unitarian Universalism. We don't seek to inculcate in people a sense of belonging for a faith community that transcends the Sunday morning topic or speaker or music. And if we are to succeed, he says, in motivating all those good folks who come searching for a liberal religious home to join and be active, we need to raise the bar of expectation for membership. Welcome. We need to convey to them that membership means willing to shoulder a fair share of the responsibility to create, co-create, and sustain the beloved community. And then there is the other side of this, which is the congregation needing to create space so that people feel a sense of belonging when they come into our congregations. Not that they are somehow expected to conform to something that is already there. In other words, learn how to hold the fork and knife a certain way that we have held all along, but instead for us to recognize that there are people who like to eat with their hands, for example. And how do we co-create that space where all people feel that sense of belonging? Which brings me to the next point, which actually the Reverend Fred Muir, who retired from the UU congregation in Annapolis, raised in a powerful Berry Street lecture that he gave at the UUA General Assembly in June 2012, which was titled From I-Church to Beloved Community, Ecclesiology and Justice. In that lecture, Reverend Muir said, if we want to grow, we must focus less on individualism and more on interdependence. And then he went on to share how individualism not only shaped American culture writ large, but also shaped Unitarian Universalism. He said, we comprise the church of Emersonian individualism. We are the I church, he declared. And the result has been that many UU congregations have become places of self-enlightenment and entertainment for mostly middle-class people who are already here. And we have become steadily more privatized in our understanding of the religious venture and rather muddled in our response to poverty, to hunger, inequity, evil, and violence in the world. We ministers are particularly to blame in this regard because we have seen our primary role to comfort the afflicted. And we have been reluctant to afflict the comfortable, lest we offend you and lose you in the process. While individualism may have been a bold and appealing way to create and build a nation and its institutions and to grow Unitarian Universalism, it is not sustaining, nor is it sustainable. Because individualism will not serve the greater good, a principle to which we have committed ourselves in our principles and purposes. There is little to nothing about the ideology and theology of individualism that encourages people to work and live and love together, to create and support institutions that serve common aspirations and beloved principles. Reverend Muir points out that we cannot do both covenant and individualism. Individuality, yes, but not individualism. Because to live as a community in covenant takes a lot of work. Articulating our principles as a commitment to covenant, to creating and sustaining a community by promising to one another our mutual trust and support, takes a lot of effort. In addition to extreme individualism, there are two other challenges or distractions. The first is a sense of exceptionalism. Now, for many of us, we once were lost, perhaps in childhood faiths of dogma or fundamentalism or bigotry or exclusion. And then we were found by finding our way to a Unitarian Universalist congregation. And at times we have become so enamored of this path with its freedom and reason and tolerance that sometimes we may gloat or believe at the very least that we are uniquely virtuous or uniquely destined to accomplish great things, end of quote, which Reverend Muir paraphrased Randall Kennedy's essay on American exceptionalism. The I church, Reverend Muir says, the individualistic church, then may come across as elitist, insulting, degrading, isolating, and even humiliating of others. In the essay Dangerous Myths, the Reverend Bill Miller, who served the UU congregation of Fort Myers in Florida before his untimely death in 1994, wrote this: "Growth is the farthest thing from the minds of some liberal religionists. Many of our churches operate as private clubs open to members only. After all, if you have discovered truth, beauty, and right, and know that only a small elite can possibly attain that goal, then surely you do not want to be sullied by the intellectually, spiritually, or culturally unwashed. We smugly congratulate ourselves on our rejection of proselytizing, grandly affirming a gracious tolerance of differing points of view. We then sit content with our small numbers, knowing that our way can only appeal to people who are truly superior, which is to say, people just like us. After all," he says, "if small is beautiful, then tiny is terrific." Now, whenever that happens, we are failing our principles and our faith. Unitarian Universalists demographically are highly credentialed academically as an in-group. However, our core dynamic as members with broad appeal is way deeper than that. We attract thoughtful people. And thoughtfulness is a trait that cuts across all classes and races and does not require a string of degrees. And we know that here at Cedar Lane. And along the way, we here in exploring the world's religions and being engaged in other cultures, we learn that our faith, as exceptionally good as it is for us, is not necessarily the only option for everyone else, that we don't have the copyright on truth. Never have, never will. As much as you or I may love the spiritual approach and the community we share and shape. So the second challenge is that we try to be all things for all people. And we believe in no cause left behind. In the process, we end up keeping to the moderate middle and not shaking the boat. Our liberal religious heritage, though, demands that we live on the edge of our comfort and develop the ability and compassion to deal with our spiritual discomfort. So how do we grow? Well, growth does not happen on its own. It is invited. Some of it is actually planned. We must be intentional for growth to occur. And growth, by whatever measure, also implies that dreaded word, change. Repeatedly, the research on religious groups, regardless of the denomination, identifies health, strength, vitality, and growth with the openness and the will to change. The choice is not to develop a strategy for growth, but to develop a strategy for intentional change based on mission and vision. And to be a mission-based congregation means doing transformational work, programming and giving for growth, and visioning and embodying a different reality. So how do we connect with the hundreds, perhaps thousands of those who live near us who would thrive as Unitarian Universalists? Partly by what we say, partly by how we say it, partly by what we offer, and mostly by how we live it. We need to shift our perspective from how we get people through our doors, which we do a fabulous job of, by the way, which might be our original goal, to how we are creating a valuable experience for all people. In the words of Kerry McDonald, the UUA's Chief Operating Officer, we need to reframe our message to join our cause instead of join our club, by showing what our congregation does and how it helps people live better lives and work for a better world. Now, this all leads to the question, why is growth important for individual congregations as well as the entire association of UU congregations? Well, survival is one answer. Because if we cannot grow, we will not survive. But why do we want to survive, even thrive? We want to grow not because it looks good on a minister's resume or gets us breakthrough congregation awards at the UUA General Assembly or to balance our budget. That's not why we must grow. We want to grow because our Unitarian Universalist faith is needed more than ever today. Let me repeat that. Our Unitarian Universalist faith is needed more than ever today. There is no other time in our history than what we have and cherish and have to offer is desperately needed in today's world. If you had any doubts about the relevance of our message, get that out of your heads. We are incredibly relevant to today. Are you with me? Okay, just checking. And we have a message to share. We have a light to shine for people who are seeking desperately meaning in their lives, connection in their lives, yearning to grow in their capacity to love and in their commitment to serve the causes of goodness and healing in our world. And we are also called by our principles and purposes to participate in the prophethood and priesthood of all believers, ministering to one another as well as living out our mission in the larger world. And if we are to live up to our faith's calling and embrace those at the center And at the margins, we need to reimagine, redesign, and repurpose the way we are doing church right now. We need to figure out ways to cultivate the same kind of empathy, sympathy, and understanding we show people who are already here to those who have not found us yet and would find profound meaning in what we have to offer. We Unitarian Universalists have arrived at a breakthrough moment where we must write a new narrative. We have an urgent need for telling, sharing, writing, and living the story of who we will be, who we are becoming. We must speak and live the Unitarian Universalist story we want others to know. And the vision of a deep covenantal community life, as it is already named in our principles, is radical. Many of us proudly share those principles as we testify, march, and share with newcomers. What is vital is committing to this expression of our faith not as an I-church, not from the narrow goal of individualism, but as the promise of covenant and the beloved community. Speaking of which, last Sunday afternoon, we hosted the 6th annual interfaith service to celebrate the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, right here in this space. This whole sanctuary was packed with people from all over the region, of different faiths, different traditions, different races and ethnicities, sexual orientations and gender identities, young and old, came together to lift up, celebrate, and be Dr. King's vision of the beloved community. So it is not some kind of this hazy, fuzzy dream that's out there, folks. It is right here, right now at Cedar Lane. We are making it happen. So, however imperfectly we go about it, we need to commit ourselves to continue doing that, and doing it well, and doing it over and over again. That is when we will grow, we will flourish. So let me close with these words from the sermon Theodore Parker preached at his own installation in 1848, which to me rings true to this day. He said, "The church that is to lead this century will not be a church creeping on all fours, its face turned down, its eyes turned back. It must be full of the brave spirit of the day, keeping also the good of times past." May there be space, abundant space, in this community to choose growth. May it be so. Amen. Amen. And to make that happen, let us now rise and sing with joy, "This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine." I leave you with these words of benediction from the Reverend Dr. Michael Schuler. If we are proud of this spiritual community, let us make it a higher personal priority. If we are concerned for its future, may we help to realize its vision. If its values resonate with ours, may we live them out with daring and devotion. This congregation cannot prosper nor fulfill its high purpose without our faith, our support, our witness. Its destiny and its bright promise depend on the many, not just the few. Go in peace. Go making peace, living gently, loving fiercely, and bowing to the mystery. Please be seated.